us some of the defining moments in Formula One history. Nelson Piquet claimed his third driver's title there. Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost had two memorable tangles, and Damon Hill won his title at the track in 1996. During practice for the 2000 race, there was even a small earthquake. No earthquakes this time, hopefully, but we do have John Watson and Ben Edwards. So, Ben, who's going to make the earth move in Japan this weekend?
May well be the Japanese fans beating a path to catch Takuma Sato. He's the first Japanese driver to race at Suzuka in 3 years, and he might become the first Japanese driver to score points in some 12 years at this track. But he hasn't scored any points so far this year, so Takuma Sato could be the man. John, what do you reckon? Can he get some points in his final race of the year?
Well, we've seen him excite us all throughout the season. I mean, he's going to be just absolutely manic here this weekend. But there are other battles going on in the championship, both in the Manufacturers and in the Drivers' Championship. I'm looking at the Manufacturers' Championship. That's very important to the future of this sport. And you've got Jaguar in 6th place, BAR and Jordan 7th and 8th, and there's only a point splitting those three teams. Likewise, who's going to end up third in the Drivers' Championship? You've got Ralf Schumacher, Montoya and David Coulthard. Montoya looks fairly safe, but there's only 1 point between Ralf Schumacher and David Coulthard. There's a lot going on here this weekend. It may not be the headline that you're going to read in the newspaper on Sunday morning or possibly Monday morning, but nevertheless, to teams and drivers, it is of great importance.
Well, indeed, the teams and drivers are getting ready because they'll be on circuit. Well, at least the track will be open in just a few moments' time. And as we look at our coverage, Rubens Barrichello shaking hands with his mechanics as he gets ready for the final Friday free practice session of the year. Taking a look at that constructors battle that you were talking about there, John, it is the battle further down the order. 5th place Sauber on 11 points. They're 3 points ahead of Jaguar on 8 points, and of course it's only Jaguar's recent improvement in form that has allowed them to move ahead of BAR Honda and Jordan Honda, both tied now on 7 points. Now Honda, of course, Suzuka was built by Honda back in the early 60s. It is absolutely crucial to Honda that they have a good weekend, but which team's going to come out on top? That's the question. Here is the man we were talking about a moment ago. It is Takuma Sato. There'll be a massive amount of interest in him this weekend.
Yeah, very much so. The home driver going to be, well, he's not quite first out on the track, so we'll just watch as he comes down, waits for the track to finally open. But the battle between BAR and Jordan, actually it's swung slightly to BAR's favour. That's because of Jacques Villeneuve's 4th place in the British Grand Prix. The best that we've seen from a Jordan this year is a 5th place from Giancarlo Fisichella. So very tight indeed, but of course next year Honda providing engines for only one team, and that is BAR. Jordan moving over to the Cosworth-based Ford engine that they will run in 2003, but that of course will be the Jaguar engine of this year, as Jaguar move on to a brand new 90-degree V10 engine for the 2003 season.
Special specification Hondas available for their drivers this weekend. Doing their usual radio checks as they head up through the S's. Running commentary from Takuma as he makes his way around. He hasn't raced here at Suzuka since the end of the 90s, and now he's quite a long way away from the pits. Radio still seems to be working. That's the crossover, famous here at Suzuka. It's the only Formula One track in current use like that. And now he heads off through this flat out right hand towards the spoon curve, one of the most famous corners on this track.
Yes, you're picking up speed all the way through. It's a big, long right-hand corner. Basically, you've got two apexes, then run out to the left and cut back, and then hard on the brakes for this double left-handed spoon corner, which of course leads on to what is essentially the fastest part of this 3.6-mile Suzuka racetrack. Is the straight, but of course you've also got to get through the 130R, one of the best corners on any Grand Prix circuit in the world. And that's a place to stand in qualifying. You don't need to watch, you just have to listen. And to see anybody attempting to go through there, maybe just a touch on the brake with the left foot, but certainly as near to flat as possible, is as awesome as it gets.
And then through the chicane here, the Casio Triangle as it's known, where the overtaking is sometimes possible. but it needs to be a fairly brave manoeuvre, and for the other driver to give a little bit of space. Of course, he can get into trouble for cutting that chicane. We saw that last year for Ralf Schumacher in the race itself. But cars just making their way. As you can see, weather conditions are pretty good. The weather forecast, I have to say, is good for the entire weekend. As we look down over the track, some sunshine. It was pretty sunny yesterday as well, and there's no forecast of any rain. This time of year we have had wet Japanese Grand Prix in the past, but it looks set to be fair this time.
Yes, and I suppose it's interesting that Ferrari are out immediately. Barrichello still in the pits with his car, but Michael Schumacher, one of the earlier cars, out on track. And that's not something we see regularly. Certainly we waited from some time in the US Grand Prix before both Ferraris came out on track. And of course, again, immediately Michael Schumacher was quickest, having watched for about 15-20 minutes while everybody worked away at chipping down the times. He went out, and in that first flying lap was quickest of all.
So most people making their way straight back into the pits. Rather slow moving Renault there. I think that was Jarno Trulli just coming in fairly slowly. But as we look down over this Suzuka track, a track that is certainly one of the favourites with the drivers, many of the drivers comparing it to Spa as one of their best tracks in terms of a challenge that they come to throughout the season. Ralf Schumacher ended up with the fastest lap here last year, although he had that penalty. He had to come into the pits, make a 10-second stop and go penalty for cutting the chicane, so he'll be hoping for better things this time around. Ferrari coming in here. The Renault was going very slowly, Jarno Trulli. I don't know whether he's just coasting around, but Schumacher was in a hurry.
Well, it just looked like Jarno Trulli was maybe just not quite fully aware of what was going on, and Michael Schumacher very anxious to come back into the pit lane, get back in as quickly as possible. And again, one of the BARs coming in, and this is
very slowly.
I think it's Olivier Panis.
Yes. He really is coasting in.
Yeah, well, it's literally, it's almost like there's no engine power while he's picking up the throttle now. Very strange seeing two cars. It looks like he did the entry into the pit lane previously was I'm just trying to wonder, there's a loop at the back which is used if you're testing here, but it didn't seem as if he came in the normal route.
There have been very slight alterations made to the track this year, really only in increasing the runoff in a couple of areas, and that has made a very slight difference to the track length. I mean, it's fractions. It's gone from 3.644 miles to 3.617. But what that does mean, of course, is that new lap record to be established in the record books, as the statistics go. The lap record on the previous format of track will always belong to Ralf Schumacher, and a new lap record and a new pole record will be set this weekend. Just a quick note on the pole situation. Michael Schumacher has not been beaten for pole position here at Suzuka since 1997. He's had 4 pole positions in a row. Jacques Villeneuve was the last person to get a pole position here before Michael Schumacher, and you don't really see much prospect of Michael Schumacher's run being finished this weekend.
Not really. I mean, you have to guarantee, I think, a Ferrari front row, if not certainly in pole position, because the nature of the Ferrari really suits this circuit. In particular, when you get into turns 1 all the way through up into that edge of the Dunlop curve and that long left-hand corner, turn 7 and 8, it is one of those corners which really, again, it takes you to stand out to visually appreciate just how fast a Formula 1 car does go around a corner. The speed of the Ferrari in particular through those corners is going to be impressive. If ever a racetrack was designed for a race car, you have to believe that Ferrari, with the Bridgestone tyre package that we heard Peter talking about a little bit earlier, is purpose-built for the Suzuka circuit.
So Ralf out of the car, speaking to Mario Tyson. And Gerhard Berger, twice winner here at Suzuka. In fact, he won the first Grand Prix to be held at this track back in 1987 when he was driving for Ferrari. That was from pole position, and of course he also won in 1991 in a win that was gifted to him by his teammate then, Ayrton Senna. So twice a winner at Suzuka. It was always one of his favourite tracks, and it's definitely one of this man's favourite tracks. Jacques Villeneuve getting ready to climb aboard the BAR. Now, talking of Honda Power, Peter Windsor's got a chance to talk to technical director at the other Honda Power team, Jordan. He's with Gary Anderson.
I am indeed, Gary. Obviously the installation checks going on at the moment. How are those Honda engines this morning?
Yeah, everything seems okay. I'd say the first lap just to go and say there's no oil leaks or anything, but all seems all right.
There's a rumour floating around the paddock that they're going to race the qualifying engines here. Is that right?
Well, you know, we've never really had a qualifying engine, but the last couple of races, the spec we've used in qualifying we'll use for the race here. We have an engine slightly better than that for qualifying, but it's really just the amount of engines you need as opposed to being the qualifying engine, you know. They just got enough built now to race them as well.
What was the problem with that engine failure on Taku's car at Indy?
Again, it looks like there was something in the airbox that got into the engine that shouldn't have been there, foreign body as such. There's basically a filter on top of a carbon fibre tray where all the trumpets are, and there was something underneath that filter. A very small piece got in onto the top of the piston, got caught underneath one of the valves, and then failed. I mean, it's obviously something that shouldn't happen, but you don't know when it's happened, really.
Big weekend for Taku here. How's he been so far?
Yeah, he's good. I mean, I think there's two ways you can go. You can either use it as support, or you can get a bit flustered by it all. And I think he's taken it as support, so that's quite good.
He's going to be pretty spectacular to watch around here, I think.
Yeah, it's a fairly special track, and he's pretty brave. So yeah, I think we'll keep an eye on the TV monitors.
Very best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Gary Anderson in relaxed mood this morning as we just look down into the Minardi pitch garage briefly. Alex Young, of course, raced here last year. Mark Webber has never been here before, so he's got a bit of work to do to sort of work out this Suzuka track.
Yeah, it's not an easy circuit to learn. That sequence of corners behind the pits, those S's are very quick, and if you get it wrong in one, it tends to be wrong through the whole sequence, and it is pretty cruel to punishing in terms of any errors or mistakes in driving. But just listening to Gary Anderson, he didn't mention that he's actually been able to support his technical team, because just an announcement came before the weekend that Niccolo Petrucci, chief aerodynamicist at Arrows and formerly I think he worked at Ferrari as well, has signed up to join Henri Durand and to bolster the aerodynamic side of Formula One cars. Of course, the aerodynamics is such a key part of a car's performance, so for Jordan that looks like pretty good news.
Not much news on Arrows, except that perhaps more legal action taking place, so no sign of the cars, of course, here in Japan this weekend. Now, we're looking at a little bit of work going on in the Renault pit, adjusting the front pushrod there. In the meantime, of course, test drivers are always such an important part of a Formula One team's work throughout the year, and Bruce Jones was caught up with one of the Williams test drivers, Marc Genet.
Marc Genet, you're the man that puts all the miles, or the most miles, on Williams's during testing. What's new for Suzuka for the final race?
Not so much, because on my side I've been working mainly on next year's engine, and maybe we have some like suspension modification, but something that it's been tried for next year. We see that it works, and then we will apply it for this weekend.
But you've recently signed to stay on and do some more testing with Williams. They must rate you very highly.
Well, I was happy to stay with Williams. I think they're happy with the job we are doing. So in that situation, it's very easy for both to have resigned for one for the year. Main reason really being that I do a lot of miles. I'll do almost 20,000 kilometers this year, which is a lot, and that really keeps me fit.
Mark, good to see you. Thank you.
Well, that's Marc Genet, and he was working with young Brazilian star Antonio Pizzoni, and he was a bit of a star again last week, I gather, John, testing for Williams. He's showing himself. He might have had a bad Formula 3000 season, but he's been doing well in recent F1 testing.
Very quick indeed, only second quickest I think to Alexander Wurz, who set a new record at Barcelona last week. Of course, everybody's saying, well, don't read too much into it, because the temperature was about 10 degrees cooler than it is during the summertime. And of course, that's always one of the problems in testing in Barcelona. It is such a temperature-sensitive racetrack. Another interesting fact, Marc Genet talking about 20,000 kilometres. I was talking to somebody in Williams, and they reckon that the team has done something in the region of 60,000 testing kilometres this year. And that is just an awesome amount of mileage, and it's no wonder that teams and the budgets have to be so large. Now, one of the proposals is a restriction on testing, and I must say that I personally would favour some kind of restriction on testing, because while it adds, let's say, to reliability, it's questionable that it would actually change anything throughout the field.
Well, lots to talk about this weekend with those proposals having been made. Meanwhile, Peter, I think you've made it down to the Ferrari pit.
Yes, that's right, Ben, where sadly there is no Ross Brawn on the pit wall or in the no Ross Brawn on the pit wall or in the garage here at Ferrari. Presumably that slip disc still playing up, Luca.
Yes, Ross is still suffering from a back pain. He's covering staying at home in England. but he's in constant link with us. So in a way, it's just like he's here. And I think now he's watching us, and I want to say hello to him if he's watching me. And anyway, Luca Baldisseri is doing his job on the pit wall, and I think that everything will go as usual, even though Ross is not here.
So when you say he's in constant touch, what sort of equipment does he have at his home in England?
We set up a sort of a video link from his home to here through the satellite network we are using usually with Maranello. So he can follow the briefing, and also he can say, if he thinks he has to say something, he can join. He can talk to the engineers immediately. So
even in the pit lane while the car is here?
Maybe not exactly when they are on the pit wall during the, but he can make himself listen to the people in the garage.
So there's lots of opportunity for Michael and Rubens to say, sorry Ross, couldn't quite hear you there, what was that?
Maybe not for this race, but
okay, well Ross, we send you our best wishes too and hope it's another great weekend for Ferrari.
Yeah, of course, we hope so.
Thank you very much, Luca.
You're welcome.
Well, yeah, let's just add to that. Ross, if you're watching, good to have you on board. Of course, the only way to watch Friday free practice is on F1 Digital Plus, and we're now watching Takuma Sato, and John, he's already pushing quite hard on those sequence of corners behind the pits, isn't he?
He is indeed. I mean, it's a circuit he is familiar with. Nevertheless, in a Formula One car, and just looking at the Jordan as it comes through these long, how much the car is bottoming. We saw some work being carried out on one of the Renaults, and I suspect that they were adjusting the ride height of that car. And I think when this Jordan makes it back into the pits, they want to have a quick look at the bottom of the car, the amount of wear that's going on the plank, to call it that. Again, look at the mark, you can see how much, there's all the marks on the track, and that's only from most cars just doing an out and in lap. So Takuma Sato already very much on the pace, getting the first flavour of this circuit in a Grand Prix car, and no easy challenge indeed. A young man who's shown incredible courage and commitment, sometimes a little bit headstrong, but you know, if you've got the speed, you can train all the other requirements. If you haven't got the speed, forget about it.
Well, the blue hair for Mika Sala, we've got, as you can see, yellow hair from many of the Jordan team this week. They've been spending some time in Hawaii. Of course, the 2-week gap between the United States Grand Prix and this Japanese Grand Prix did see some of the teams managing to get in some leisure time. And Jordan and indeed the Minardi guys were in Hawaii, one or two others over that part of the world as well.
Yes, but the guys, the team members may have been there, but the test teams were still operating. And in fact, Takuma Sato, who we were watching, came back from the United States, spent a couple of days at Silverstone driving around in reasonable conditions. It wasn't particularly warm, but they got some good running in, and as were Renault. But it was Olivier Gavin who was driving the car for Renault at that particular occasion, and I happened to catch Oliver Gavin driving the car. You know, difficult to step into a Formula One car, but I think over the 3 days, Renault very happy indeed with the work that he provided for them.
Let's ride with Takuma here, coming through Spoon Corner. And now onto the straight, heading up towards 130R, the big commitment corner. Let's just watch and listen. Oh, well, we just come off for a moment. This is a corner that we will be concentrating on that onboard coverage throughout the weekend, because it is one of those classic corners in Formula One where it's a true challenge to driver and car alike, and it's worth listening to it and seeing what the driver's up to through there. He's going to come around to set another faster lap here. The only driver really to have put together a sequence of laps, a 1:41.363.
Yes, and to give you an idea of how fast Takuma Sato's going, and this is his 5th lap in fact. Pole time last year was a 1:27, sorry, pole time 1:32. I was going to say 1:27 is a bit quick, 1:32.484. So he's sort of 7.5, 8 seconds away from that, which, when you consider the track's pretty green and there's nobody really out doing anything spectacular, only Mark Webber and Alex Young in the two Minardis. We've just got Felipe Massa going.
Car and jockey, the other car is going out with the same fuel level as discussed, but is planning to do
Felipe Massa, will he actually have to serve out the penalty that was imposed upon him in Monza, where he was docked 10 places from a starting grid had he driven in the US Grand Prix? Now, I've been trying to track this one down, and it's a bit of an anomaly, because there's concern that what Sauber did by taking Felipe Massa out of the car was a sort of, let's say, got around the penalty, so the team would have been penalised along with Massa in the US had Massa driven. But by putting Frentzen into the car, they avoided the penalty. Now, Massa hasn't served that penalty. Whether he will start in his grid position or whether he have to start a further 10 positions back for this Grand Prix, we have to find out.
Well, let's watch the onboard view. Rev counter on the left-hand side as normal. And he is learning this track. He has never raced at Suzuka. Oh, and he's missed the apex big time, second part of Spoon. There you are, he's still learning. Now, I have to say the team have been very impressed with the way he learns tracks, and he is pushing pretty hard. Let's just watch him through 130R.
Very wise, he's up 0.3 of a second up nonetheless, but very wisely, not going through there anything like it we'll be doing when it comes to Saturday qualification, but certainly not afraid to take very big chunks out of the curb. Lets the car run wide as he comes out of the exit of that chicane, and then flat out across start finish line, about 190, maybe 195 miles an hour before just lifts off, brakes lightly into turn 1.
Jean Todt looks happy, he looks relaxed this morning, as Felipe Massa has just gone fastest with that time in the Sauber. So it is Massa and then Sato, Webber third, and this man, Alan McNish, fourth fastest.
And it's pretty impressive, I think, for Felipe Massa. On his fourth lap, went quicker than Sato did on his fifth lap, so he has learned the track pretty quickly. There's Alan McNish half a second down already in that second sector, comes through that 130R, and a bit of a battle, one might suggest, between the Honda and Toyota teams here, and that will again be a major focus for the local press and all the local race fans who support these two particular marques.
Alan has raced here in the past, extensive sports car experience of course. He also, when he was testing for McLaren many years ago, he tested out here in Japan for them. So he knows the track well, he does enjoy it, so it's not as if he has to spend time learning the place, but he does need to get the car sorted. Toyota did test here last October with their last year's car, but remember of course this year's car entirely different.
So Felipe Massa is continuing along his way. He's got a quickest time in that first sector, but in fact that's been subsequently beaten, as I said it, by Jenson Button in the Renault. We go to Ralf Schumacher. So Ralf Schumacher beginning a lap, as we want to watch what Jenson Button in the Renault is doing, and keep an eye on Felipe Massa, who is actually fractionally slower in that second sector. He's still quickest in that one, 39.460.
Riding with Ralph. Another one to know this track extremely well, having raced in Japan earlier in his career very successfully, but he's never had a... very wide there.
Well, I was just watching the amount of understeer he was getting through those sequence of S-bends behind the pits and then through the Dunlop curve. It was all wrong. A little bit of an early morning wake-up call for Ralf Schumacher, just a 10th of a second down, as we now see a further improvement from Felipe Massa to 1:39.385. Ralf Schumacher pushing quite hard, but Montoya actually now quickest in the first sector, with Heidfeld quickest in that second sector.
So we're beginning to see a few times being set. Let's just watch Ralph as he comes up towards that double left-hander at Spoon. Tucks it in nicely. You have to sort of just give it a little bit of left foot braking effectively for the second part, then on the power hard, and this is where the horsepower can truly be unleashed.
Well, while Ralph's unleashing it, Heidfeld's gone quickest on a 1:39.235. So literally we're saying the quickest lap almost by the car dropping. Montoya is the one that's really going to set this track on fire, because he's currently quickest in first and second sectors and will very shortly be coming across start-finish line as we watch Ralf Schumacher do that particular task.
So let's see where this... But this does put him fastest ahead of Nick Heidfeld, but Montoya's on his way around. And as
Montoya goes quickest.
Yes, a 37.3, so about a second faster on his first flying lap there. You know, Montoya seemed to relish the challenge of this place when he arrived last year. He did manage to out-qualify his teammate Ralf Schumacher, despite Ralph's extensive experience of racing at Suzuka, and went on to finish in a good second place, Montoya, in the race. So he loves it, and he's already a second up on Ralph.
Well, Takuma Sato, but let's talk about Ferrari. Michael Schumacher, as we watch, is on a lap. First sector 33.715, and Ross hasn't got that by a direct telecommunications links from Suzuki. He can get it here on F1 Digital Plus. Rubens Barrichello still in the pits, having only completed that installation lap. But Michael Schumacher looking a little bit more serious now as he gets down to work, comes through that long double left-hand corner spoon. Critical to good exit and top speed down this straight.
To watch out with the Minardi of Alex Young a little way ahead of him, but it shouldn't affect him too much.
And he's gone fastest in that second sector, 42.919.
Now let's just ride with him as he comes through this chicane. Fiddly corner, of course, so really have to slow it all down. Good traction required out of there.
This one's look again, I don't know whether that's... We've seen this before from Michael. Here he goes second quickest, fastest in second and third sectors, and just 61 thousandths slower than Juan Pablo Montoya, both achieving their fastest laps on their fourth lap. There's where the speed is going to come from the Ferrari, through these sequence of rights and lefts behind the pits.
Yeah, it's always fantastic through there. I have to say, though, it's encouraging from Montoya and Ralph to normally see Michael Schumacher go out in this session, John. Normally he waits around, lets everybody set some times, and then comes out and absolutely obliterates it, but he hasn't done it this time.
Well, Ben, he's about to do it now because he's gone fastest in that first sector. 32.866 is the time, and we wait to see what happens. The second sector comes much further around the lap. It's in fact on the return leg out of spoon before you get to 1:30 hours, so we've got to wait quite a long time to see. And in fact is half a second quicker than Montoya in that first sector, so it's pretty much status quo for Michael Schumacher and Ferrari. So through the spoon corner, just look at the car just sticks to that tarmac, so we get that second sector time any moment now as he comes up over. Should be, it is purple, 42.415, 1.2 seconds quicker than Juan Pablo Montoya. Looks stunning through the 1:30 hour and down into this rather fiddly and tight chicane.
Yes, well, here comes obliteration straight away. He is, might not have been his first true flying lap, a little bit sideways coming out there. He's noticed that before he had to apply a little bit of opposite lock. It's slightly unusual to see them sliding through that section, but look how much faster he is. 1.20 seconds faster than Montoya's mark of a few moments ago. It's already faster than the lap record from last year, but still some way off, of course, the qualifying record that Michael himself set from 12 months ago.
Yeah, and Pablo Montoya just getting a little bit sideways. This is the on view from the camera. Oops, it is just, and you see him really struggling on the entry into the corner. The back end was coming away, so he had to apply the lock. Of course, he misses the corner. He's gone back into the pits, as has teammate Ralf Schumacher. And there's Montoya. Makes it, of course, the Ferrari, BMW, Williams and McLaren are down at the end of the pit lane rather than the top. So, I wonder if they're at the top. Hold on a second, you can see in the pit lane. I think they should be at the top of that.
So, Montoya comes in, second and third for the two Williams. Look at Panis, he's moved up to fourth in the VAR Honda. So that's a good effort from the Frenchman. And indeed, Bruce Jones is talking to Ron Meadows of BAR.
Ron Meadows of BAR.
Oh, big
what
BS
specification
Panis
of Honda has your team got this weekend? Because we saw it in Indianapolis.
Villeneuve, in fact. Red flag, and that's a big shunt coming out of spoon.
Yeah, it's Villeneuve. It is Jacques.
Yes, it is Villeneuve. I thought that initially it was Panis. It's Jacques Villeneuve, and he's lost it. You can see where he's ridden the curb. He may have just caught the dirt, and that is a heavy, heavy impact. Now, Jacques Villeneuve looks like he's fine. He's just getting out of the car. The marshals vigorously waving those red flags. No hesitation whatsoever from race director Charlie Whiting to stop this session. As there you see, well, bits of bodywork. It's probably slightly more superficial than it is structural, but there are the marks, and look at the mess on the racetrack. That's going to take a few minutes to clear up as Kimi Räikkönen makes his way very, very slowly indeed as Fisichella behind. And bodywork and grass and bits of car. That's what, well, there it just catches the very end of it. The right rear, and I hit that tyre barrier. Pretty good old thump, didn't he?
Yeah, that was a big whack. He just put the wheel over the edge. You can see the tyre marks heading back from the curb, heading out. Then look at Michael. He had a good view of this.
He certainly saw all that, and I mean, he was well aware of what was happening. And he really had to concern himself about where is the cleanest part of the racetrack for me to get through without doing any damage or maybe cutting a tyre. As Mario Willen looks up and shakes his head and thinks, man, that was a big one, wasn't it? It wasn't that big, but it's because of all the body. More concern there for his manager, Craig Pollock, and a lot of discussion about what Craig Pollock and Jacques Villeneuve are up to. They were seen at the Miami kart race last weekend. For Jacques Villeneuve, disappointment indeed, as it will be for Honda, Ben, because this is the man who did a stunning job last weekend or 2 weekends ago in America. Now that car will not be out again this afternoon, and they will not be able to do any further running with Villeneuve unless they put him into Panis's car. And this is a big setback for BAR, particularly in their World Championship Manufacturers Championship.
Yeah. Oh, and Panis has stopped. Now I don't know whether he's quite why he's stopped out there, whether he has a problem. We saw him, if you remember, coasting into the pit lane earlier, or whether he stopped to sort of see what's happened. I don't know, but I don't think so. It's unlikely he would have stopped to offer any assistance. It's clear that Villeneuve's okay.
He's just stopped, actually, just further down the road from the incident. Now, whether that's coincidence or whatever, but David Richards, look, there is a man who's got the world on his shoulders right now. And right. I mean, this is a cruel sport in many ways, and there is pressure. This is the team that represents Honda, the soulless team next year, and one car's crashed out, the other car stopped further down the track. So the process of sweeping up the shards of carbon fibre, maybe the odd bit of metal that might be in the track, certainly all the grass and earth that would be chucked down. And Jack walks around and, well, he has to put that one down to himself. There was nobody else involved. That was just a pure error of judgment on his part on the exit from Spoon Corner. And I hope he'll put his hand up and say, sorry guys, that was a lot of work I've given you for a really slightly careless moment.
Well, Panis just sitting there. Let's go to David Richards with Peter Windsor.
David, you've been looking at the array of monitor screens there. Obviously not a good way to start. First of all, why has Olivier stopped there?
It appears that he's pressed the kill switch. When he was slowing down to go through all the debris and stuff, he pressed the wrong switch.
Now, what could you see from there that perhaps we haven't seen already? Anything?
No, not really. It's, early laps and just getting used to the car, getting used to the circuit, rode up on the curbs. I guess one of those things we'll find out when Jack gets back here.
Had he said anything prior to that, perhaps on the installation lap, about the car, feeling twitchy or anything like that?
No, nothing at all. It's just getting used to the place. Jack's very cautious on a Friday. Normally settles himself in, and we were just discussing how sensible he is, actually, ironically.
Very ironically. Thank you very much, David.
Isn't that always the way? Just when you think that you know how it all works. Villeneuve showing that it's easy to make a mistake. We've often seen people run a little wide out of that corner, but not with quite such dramatic consequences normally. But Villeneuve has certainly done a lot of damage to that car. Michael Schumacher had to make his way through, which he did. But Olivier Panis, well, hopefully it sounds as though Olivier Panis shouldn't have a major problem. If he's hit the kill switch, then they should be able to get the car back and restart it soon.
Yes, I mean, David, I think being rather kind and waiting for Jacques to come back and explain what happened. I mean, for a driver of Jacques' experience, that was a bit of an own goal. In fact, it was a complete own goal. I mean, riding that curb, everybody knows what it's like. You might have expected maybe somebody who's not been here before, and we've seen Takuma Sato being pretty quick out of the box in the Jordan. We've also seen Felipe Massa being pretty quick out of the box in the Sauber, and they managed to negotiate the exit of Spoon. So Jacques, you can see him moving his neck around. He might have got a bit of a tweak on the neck, and he may want to get a bit of physio when he gets back into the pits just to make sure those muscles. There's another angle just at the point of impact, and you can see how the car rears up and that right front wheel comes off. Now that is not meant to happen. There's a double tether.
Yeah, it did stay attached.
It did stay attached, yes, it did in fact stay attached.
Yeah, both rear and front. Yeah, so did a pretty good job. There is test driver Anthony Davidson, who has been testing in the interval, in fact, between the United States Grand Prix and this race. Actually a suspension or a mechanical problem of some sort, which also put him into a shunt, didn't it?
Yes, it did. In Barcelona, the team said there was a mechanical issue which caused Anthony to have a shunt which shot him off into the barriers, and didn't clarify as to what it was, just owned up to it. So it's been a rather tough few days for the team. They got that fine 6th place. Jacques Villeneuve drove one of his strongest races of the season in the US 2 weekends ago, and now having to make his way back and go into the garage and say, listen guys, I'm sorry, there is the car. I think the damage probably a lot more superficial Concern might be around the front of the car. Let's look at it again, Ben. There we see it as it comes round. So that right front has taken the brunt of the impact. The nose got a fair dig. Don't worry about the back of the car because the gearbox and engine will help absorb. So there shouldn't be any concern about structural damage at the back. It's really around the front and where the suspension mounts into the monocoque that there could be an issue. If it is superficial, there is the possibility that guys, we've seen miracles performed by teams before, that they might get it up on the stands, strip it down. They could just take the entire rear off that car and put another entire rear on, but it's that right front will be the concern.
Well, it makes its way back to the pits. Let's get a little bit more reaction now from the BAR team. Bruce Jones has caught up with James Robinson.
James Robinson of BAR, I've just seen you looking at the replays. What do you think happened with Jacques Villeneuve?
Obviously very difficult to say. The replay doesn't pick it up until the car's actually heading towards the barrier, so we'll try and go up the tower and try and look at some more footage, see what happened. Either sort of driver error or maybe something failed. We need to check.
Has Jacques said anything to you?
No, nothing on the radio, obviously straight out of the car.
It looks so Olivier Panis has pulled over to the side of the track as well. What's the problem with him?
We don't know at present. Obviously we're waiting for him to get back and to check, but obviously we saw him pull over just after Jack, so we need to check.
Okay, leave you to it. Thank you very much.
Well, they should have that car back to the pits fairly soon. Of course, this is a bit of a pause for everybody else, having to sit and wait. Kimi Räikkönen in the McLaren, just biding his time until they can get the car back on circuit once again. Jacques Villeneuve certainly always gone well at this Suzuka track. Anybody can make a mistake, though. Remember, he took pole position in his first visit in a Grand Prix car. He had raced here extensively in his Formula 3 days in Japan, but took pole position here when he was driving for Williams back in 1996. The year that, of course, he lost the championship to Damon Hill, made a terrible start from pole position. The following year, he also, as we mentioned earlier, had pole position in the Williams.
So the session will commence in a further, about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, as Villeneuve's car is brought in. Now, the concern for the team is that they're not going to get Olivier Panis's car back, and that car we saw was being pushed behind the barriers just before one car, and that'll be a very disappointing situation if that car cannot be brought back.
Obligation to bring it back to the pits, so it could be that they don't have
the rev drop into high gear,
and then couldn't get out of gear.
So we don't know. The footage is off the curb and the car's lost control by the time the camera picks it up, so we need to speak to him.
Well, Ray Pollock trying to find out a little bit more what happened to Jacques. Maybe we'll all find out a little bit more in a moment as he's made it back to the pit lane. There's team manager Ron Meadows just passing. And Jacques gives it a little shrug of the shoulders. Well, that's one of those things, and we're getting ready for the session to restart. Green light at the end of the pit lane. Here we go. Pit exit is open. Let's hope that everybody can make it around safely. Looks as though they've done a good job of cleaning the track up, and the cars make their way down pit lane to recommence the 34 minutes of first free practice here at Suzuka.
So a little launch control start just off to the right of pit lane exit. Gives everybody a chance just to make sure that that part of the car is adjusted. Not that it's required until Sunday, of course, but nevertheless it's a practice start. Renault have always, or let's say Benetton last year, developed this traction control, launch control mechanism, which was most impressive in the second half of the season, and still pretty impressive as well as Jarno Trulli. First car on the track, Eddie Irvine out behind him, and Juan Pablo Montoya also lines up as we see one of the two. Well, in fact, there's a whole raft of cars now making their way out. As Nick Heidfeld currently 7th quickest behind Giancarlo Fisichella. Olivier Panis, who we don't know if he was brought back. Good job from Pedro de la Rosa and the Jaguar, 4th quickest, and then it's the top 3 of Michael Schumacher, Montoya and Ralf Schumacher.
So now a chance for them to get a bit more mileage. Track temperature 27 degrees, as you can see. Air temperature 21 degrees, so it's very pleasant weather conditions, just about ideal for running in free practice here today. And as I said, the forecast is pretty good for the whole weekend. The two Williams drivers seeing what they can do, seeing how they can get a little bit more performance out of the cars for this final Grand Prix of the year. Of course, Williams second in the Constructors' Championship, safely in second place to the all-dominant Ferrari team. McLaren third place in the Constructors' battle, safely wrapped up for them. And then Renault in 4th place. Renault actually had a good time here last year. Fisichella qualified in a strong 6th place. Jenson Button was 9th on the grid, so they had their car working well in Japan 12 months ago. They've had a disappointing time, well, a little bit disappointing time, although Trulli's had a couple of points finishes in the last 2 Grand Prix, and they know that the car should work quite well. This combination of sequence of difficult corners should suit that good Renault chassis.
Yes, but again, it's the same problem with the horsepower of the Renault engine, with this unique, very wide-angle V10. Still is not producing the kind of horsepower to match what we've seen here, or we have here with BMW, as we go through the chicane with Juan Pablo Montoya, his father, in the pitch. One person not here this weekend is in fact team principal Frank Williams. Sir Frank Williams is not present at this year's Japanese Grand Prix, and he's back at base. Lots of issues he's working on, and no doubt we're watching it as Juan Pablo goes a little bit wide in the exit of turn 2, but no doubt Frank will be watching on F1 Digital Plus along with Ross Brawn at their UK homes.
Yes, well, it's great to have such luminaries joining us for our programme, and I hope you enjoy the coverage. We're just watching Montoya getting really quite out of shape down at the bottom end of the track.
Notice how much he bends his head in to these sequence of corners. That was through the long Dunlop curve. That's one of those corners that goes on and on and on, and when you think it's finished, it still keeps going.
Let's take a look at this, John. This is the outside view.
Well, he got on the dirty line, the left rear caught that off-line dust and just kicked the back of the car out. So Juan Pablo just puts the lock on, and well, he's not particularly concerned. It is an out lap, and he'll complete this lap and then start getting down to the business that we saw him a few moments ago before the circuit went red with Jacques Villeneuve's incident at the exit of Spoon Corner.
So he continues on his way. Let's just watch him to the second split. So there's not going to be as quick as you can see. He's perhaps backed it off somewhat because he's some 3.2 seconds off Michael's pace. Now we're riding with Rubens Barrichello, the man who has won the last 2 Grand Prix now, winning in Monza, of course, and winning in that bizarre finish to the United States Grand Prix 2 weeks ago, adding to his tally of Grand Prix wins. But this weekend, Michael Schumacher, I'm sure, will be out to finish off his season in style, and I don't think there'll be any messing around with team orders or playing around at the end of the race. Michael Schumacher does love this Suzuka track.
Yes, just going past David Coulthard in the McLaren. So this is the long, very daunting corner that Coulthard had a massive off there a couple of years ago, managed to keep the car off the barriers, but you know, you're picking up speed all the way through, getting up to around about 180 miles an hour before you break into Spoon Corner.
Now let's watch and listen here. Well, we just come off just as he turned in, just about as he was turning in there to 130R. So we didn't quite see how much of a lift he's giving it at this stage.
But interestingly, Barrichello was the fastest at that second sector split time at 308 kilometers per hour. So he was quick down the straight, being just a little bit cautious, going through 130R.
So full fastest for Barrichello then. The Ferrari's first and fourth at the moment.
Down about 3 gears for the second part. That takes you under the crossover. Here's the view. He was he missed it by about 2 feet, let's say, but that was enough. At the speed he was travelling at, just keeps the car going straight. And other than being caught on camera, probably nobody would have known about it.
David Coulthard now on track in the McLaren Mercedes, and he's gone second fastest to Michael Schumacher, so he's faster than the 2 Williams BMWs currently.
Yes, and maybe this is the consequence of the testing that took place in Spain last week. For once, David Coulthard was not pulling my leg by saying, well, I can't say something because John will tell me off. When questioned in the press conference on Thursday as to what they were doing in Spain, he said, oh, I can't talk about that because, you know, it's a trade secret.
Yes, that's right, although he said most people seem to have an idea what we're up to anyway. He said, I can't quite work out how everybody knows. But Alex, as you said earlier, John, Alex Wurz with that fastest time seen in testing at Barcelona. So McLaren still making good progress, there's no doubt about it. It's been a bit of an up and down season for them, but we know that they've got a great chassis, and a good chassis should respond well here at Suzuka this weekend. Don't forget, we have a very detailed interview with Ron Dennis between the 2 free practice sessions, an interview that was made just a little earlier this week, and a very open and frank interview it is with Ron Dennis. Looking forward to that between the 2 free practice sessions on our coverage today.
Yes, and Kimi Räikkönen now comes across start-finish line. McLaren saying that they're going to start the 2003 season with the MP4 17 in what they would describe as D-spec, because the latest engine that will come from Mercedes-Benz will not be ready. They're not happy, or they're slightly concerned that maybe the reliability of the engine may not be up to scratch, so they want to make sure that that is on level with the performance they expect from the engine before they commit the MP4 18 to the racetrack for the 2003 season.
Everybody trying to play catch-up to this team, to Ferrari. They've been so dominant, but can they maintain that edge next year? Of course, a lot of it will depend on the battle between the tyre companies. This will be the 100th Grand Prix for Bridgestone this weekend, since they came in 1997, and of course it's a home race for Bridgestone as well. Be plenty of their staff and workers coming along. Bit of a lift, we're listening there to Fisichella coming into 130R, still early days, but it is an important race for Bridgestone. It's been such a successful season for them as well as for Ferrari. I'm sure they'll want to celebrate in front of their Japanese fans and staff at Suzuka this weekend.
It's a very demanding circuit because of the nature of the high speeds on 2 parts of the circuit, but also the nature of this part of the circuit here into turn 1, the quick entry, then into 2, then these sequence of lefts and rights, the S's behind the pits. You need a lot of grip, you need a lot of stability as well from the tyre. High degradation, 2-stop mandatory. We've seen maybe some teams doing more, but 2 stops. So you're looking at about runs of 20, 20 and 13. That's about average for most of the teams. And both Bridgestone and Michelin continuing this process of tyre development. And Bridgestone, again, with 2 variations of tyres here this weekend.
Now watching Giancarlo Fisichella, who's never had a great deal of luck here at Suzuka. Some strange reason. He's a very talented driver, but it's never really worked out for him in the races themselves. He's never even been in the points. A 7th place finish is his best here in Japan. A little bit of instability there through the spoon corner. You could see that having to correct the steering a little bit. Heading down towards 130R. This is where the crossover is. They're now going over the top of that area where they go under the tunnel towards the hairpin. Now they're going over the top and into the left-hander. A little bit more commitment, the speed beginning to build a bit for Fisichella, and then hard on the brakes, and it's quite downhill after this chicane.
And also, as this is the exit from the chicane, it's a very long corner, and we watch Michael Schumacher, the back end of the Ferrari coming out. He was adjusting. I don't know whether he's making an adjustment to traction control on the steering wheel. That was earlier in the session there. We see the damage, particularly around that right front. So the VAR team are behind David Coulthard, a further 10th and a bit behind the 2 Ferraris. So Michael Schumacher back into the pits. Well, in fact, just doing one of those little final squirts. So push the car back into the garage, and the process of refining the F2002 Ferrari continues.
We were talking about the Bridgestone element to that equation, John. It is a very important weekend for them. Bruce Jones has called up with Hasao Suganama of Bridgestone.
Suganuma-san of Bridgestone Motorsport. Am I correct? This is the 100th Grand Prix for Bridgestone since they returned to Formula One?
Yes, since we entered the Formula One in '97, this is our 100th Grand Prix.
Obviously, being in Japan, it's a very important one. What is the particular characteristic you need to have a really fast tyre here at Suzuka? It's a very difficult circuit for the drivers and the cars.
Yes, this circuit is require the the best consistency of the tyre and also good change of direction. Because to run this circuit faster is key is on like S's over there, which require the good change of direction. So from that point, we provide our best spec to match with that characteristic.
Suzuka in October, often there's the possibility of rain. It looks though this weekend we might be lucky and have weather like today.
This time of the year.
New dry weather tyres, ones that of course that have been tested, but critical here. One of the things also is critical is in fact is temperature as well as pressures, and part of the pressure thing is to give stability. And maybe in the case of the Michelin, they will alter their pressures according to what they feel is going to give the most stability. And Jenson Button, of course, on the Michelin tyre.
Yes, and Button, as I say, has gone well here in the past. Very impressive in his first year when he was driving for Williams. Had an excellent 5th place on the grid on that occasion, and out-qualified his teammate Ralf Schumacher, which was a bit of a surprise to everybody. Last year, as I mentioned, he qualified in 9th, was out-qualified by Fisichella, but not by very much, so he does seem to enjoy this place. One of the most challenging tracks on the calendar. And let's just watch to see where this puts him for the moment. Well, he's 15th fastest only currently, and Jarno Trulli is 9th fastest.
Yes, it was an improvement in time for Jenson, but it wasn't sufficient to move him up from 15th. Alan McNish is 14th, and of course teammate, as you mentioned, is in 9th place. And one sort of wonders whether, the way teams at the end of a year, when a driver is going to lead that team, that everything focuses on the incumbent driver, who is Jarno Trulli. And just wondering what Fernando Alonso is going to find when he joins Renault next year.
Yes, but of course I'm sure there'll be a lot invested into Fernando Alonso's future. Watching Nick Heidfeld here. His car sliding around quite a lot. You can see the movement in the car as he tries to keep it under control. Again, it's not quite like watching the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher that we were looking at earlier.
Yeah, again, talking about that stability, just as Heidfeld came into turn 1, whether it was Heidfeld playing in the steering wheel or whether it's just instability, but the front of the car looked like it was just moving around more than one would like, certainly, but I think I would like, I don't know about Heidfeld, seeking out to find where to turn in, or maybe that's just simply, again, look at the amount of work. Now that's a simple, almost you wouldn't even ignore it, curve before you come into the hairpin bend, and he's having to make small adjustments all the time on the steering wheel. Watch him through this long double right. Now we go back to the external shot. At the back end of the car, you see, just fidgets around. Doesn't look to me to be an easy, happy car right now for Nick Heidfeld to negotiate around the circuit.
No, it looks like it's fairly hard work. Onto the straight now, heading up towards that quick left-hander. Let's just listen to this. No change down, but that feather on the throttle, you can hear the engine note drop, and then he picks it back up again through the corner.
Again, watch him under braking into the chicane. You can see how much he's moving the wheel around, like he's sort of darting the car. Now, again, I don't know whether that's a factor of the Sauber chassis. Let's hope we get a ride into turn 1. Maybe we can see the onboard view of what I picked up.
Yeah, again, you can see it. You can almost see his head bobbling around as well, can't you, John? Almost in reaction to the way that the car's responding to him. So not quite the stability perhaps that he would like, but not bad in terms of performance. Well, he's down in 13th place currently.
Well, a little bit of housework being carried out. No doubt there's some liquids have been dropped on the floor as the team make sure that no residues are left. Whatever it might have been, simply could have been wouldn't have been fuel, but it might have been oil or some other liquids, hydraulic fluids, and they want to make sure that those are all fully removed before the car comes back in, as we watch Dickie Stanford and Sam Michael on the pit wall. A little adjustment, a bit more wing, as I don't know, is being wing added on. So a little gurney flap, little return lip on that element of Giancarlo Fisichella.
Quite a lot of wing run here, of course, at Suzuka. More wing than we see at some tracks. They need plenty of downforce for these fast sequences of corners. Here's Eddie Irvine showing us through that section. This is one of the driver's favourite bits, the S-curves, and it's all about getting the flow through here right. If you get one of them wrong, the whole sequence goes wrong. If you can just get the sequence right and build the momentum, you can gain a huge amount of time on this lap.
Well, Jaguar had a disappointment in the US Grand Prix. They were very strong on the Saturday morning, and then it all went wrong in qualifying, and the consequence was, of course, it didn't happen for them in the Grand Prix. I caught up with Niki Lauda, and he very openly, and I sometimes wonder why other team managers aren't quite as candid as Niki is, that basically what they did between that morning session and the qualifying is they were shifting the weight around, and they put too much of that static weight, the ballast that they carry, to the rear of the car, and they realized that they'd made a huge error, and they were really unable to at the time to adjust that. So just illustrates when temperatures rise that if you get it wrong, it will affect you, and you'll just really have to live with what you've got.
Right, now, well, as we are watching Eddie Irvine just complete his lap, I think we've got a chance now to speak to Jacques Villeneuve. Jacques, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Morning.
Just talk us through what happened there. Was it driver error, or was there anything else involved in the accident?
Well, as soon as I was on the curve, the traction control decided not to work. I'm not sure why, because normally we can drive these cars on the grass and still stay flat out. So a little bit of a surprise. We'll look at the data and see what happened.
How heavy a hit was it for you? Are you feeling the effects at all, stiff neck at all, or anything like that?
No effect, but it's always surprising that when you hit the wall, you actually hit it a lot harder than you expect. But no effect, so I'm quite happy about that.
How about the amount of damage to the car? Have the boys had a chance to ascertain just how bad the chassis damage might be?
No, it's repairable. Hopefully we can get out in the second session, but I'm not sure about that yet.
Well, that'd be pretty impressive if they can get you back out. We saw Olivier Panis stop. Did you hear any more about that? Were you aware that he'd stopped just a little further down the road than you?
I saw that later. I think the car just stalled when he slowed down, so nothing major.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us. Good luck. Let's hope the boys can get the car ready for you later on.
Thank you.
So Jacques Villeneuve looks, he's okay. I did notice that little tweak in his neck. He gave his neck a bit of a swivel around, and he seems happy enough, but no doubt at some point he'll have some physio on it. It's important to make sure that if he did get a pull, that he gets it attended to, gets a bit of ice on it maybe. But the fact that the car isn't as badly damaged, it is pretty much superficial. The concern I think was principally around the right front, where the impact was really first taken by the chassis. But if that's okay, then maybe we will see Jacques out in the second part of Friday practice.
Well, let's hope so. That will be pretty impressive if they can manage it. Eddie Irvine, just watching him, he's gone 8th fastest now. The two Jags are both inside the top 10. We've got De La Rosa 7th, Eddie Irvine in 8th place. Jarno Trulli, meanwhile, hustling the Renault around to try and improve. He's been pushed down to 10th place now, with one or two others moving up. Button is currently in 12th position.
Well, on the Michelin tyre, what they've got is on what they call it, there's the harder end, as the Bridgestone harder end of their compound ranges. One of those was already used this season, the other has been tested extensively, but hasn't previously been put into service before this weekend. So both tyre companies, again, going to the edge of the envelope to try and find maximum performance.
Across the line, 7th fastest, so that puts him back up ahead again of the two Jaguars. And Renault looking to cement this 4th place in the Constructors' Championship. And lots of...
Well, Ben, they see themselves, they've got these giant TV screens right, they've seen themselves on TV. And as happens with Japanese race fans, particularly the young girls, they go into a fit of the giggles. And, I mean, when you walk through, not the paddock here, but there's an area, like a shopping mall, and every piece of memorabilia that God ever dreamt up or manufactured is available there. And if a driver happens to walk through en route to his hotel, which is actually on site for most of the teams. They realise what hero worship is all about.
That looked pretty committed from Ralf Schumacher as he begins to set some quickish laps again. Good first sector time on this lap for him. Not the fastest overall, but this could see a little improvement for Ralf, who's currently 6th fastest.
Yes, he's got to go a bit to get up to 5th because Kimi Raikkonen's on a 37.3. Ralf has improved to a 37.8. Quickest personal times in 1st and 3rd sector, but something in that middle sector wasn't just quite able to match those other 2 sectors.
Montoya still in the pits. You mentioned, John, earlier that Frank Williams isn't here this weekend, nor is Juan Pablo's fiancée Connie. She's back in Colombia and they're due to be married in a couple of weeks' time. So once the season is over, Connie and Juan Pablo will be getting married, so they've got some time to enjoy the honeymoon before the serious testing begins. But of course, all the teams will be pretty busy once they get into November with the testing for next year.
Well, there's some of the damage of Jacques Villeneuve's car.
We were right inside the BAR bit as they are desperately trying to get that car repaired, and they are under pressure, there's no doubt about it, but we're still able to watch that and see what's going on. Meanwhile, Fisichella continues on another lap.
And you can hear how much traction control they're using out of that hairpin bend, and it's lasting, what, a second and a half on acceleration, and of course it'll be doing pretty much the same on the exit from the chicane as they come on to pit straight. Fisichella able to lean fairly heavily on the rear of the car as he turns in, get the attitude of the car in such a way that he can get on the throttle early and not run too wide too soon. Now, it's interesting that Jacques Villeneuve feels that the traction control didn't operate, and that's the reason why he probably was flat on the throttle, and he thought, well, the curb and the grass, it works on the curb and the grass, and got caught out. So the team and Honda no doubt will go through the telemetry and find out precisely what did happen. But, well, you know, a driver will have an opinion and express it as Jacques did, but the team may feel that it was something else.
So Fisichella completes his lap. He's still down in 10th place at the moment. We're looking now at Rubens Barrichello. Had that little off earlier on, remember, into the gravel, but no damage was done. Only 3/10 down now on Schumacher's time.
Yes, again, personal fastest in that 2nd sector, but significantly again for Barrichello, the highest top speed at 308 kilometers per hour. We've seen other teams do that, but it's probably fractionally over the 308 kilometers per hour for the Brazilian. So a 36.6 to a 36.3, and in fact fastest of all through that 3rd sector. So Barrichello picking up time and that last sector.
So they're one of the fans with some interesting headwear.
He's probably read The Godfather.
I should think so. We'll see the film, and it's some serious horsepower there we've got from. He's on the phone as well. I have to say, Japanese fans are fantastic. They really do get into Formula One, and the whole atmosphere here at Suzuka is very, very enjoyable.
Just look at the rear tyres on the Sauber. Quite a lot of wear on that set already. Well, 11 laps completed, and I mean, you're almost looking at a tyre wear, which is, I would have said, very high at this stage of proceedings.
So back out onto the track. We've only got just under 7 minutes to go in this session. It's been a session basically of trying to get to grips with the track. We've seen Villeneuve's accidents, not too many other problems, I'm glad to say, for most of the other drivers, as Jenson Button makes his way around. And you can just see that climb up the hill. It's quite steep up into the chicane, but then it really starts to drop away. In the past, getting off the grid here was sometimes a challenge because it's quite downhill here. The cars would roll if the drivers took their foot off the brake. Nowadays, of course, with the traction control systems, should make life a great deal easier for the run down into this first corner.
Well, an improvement for Jensen. He's gone up to 12th from 15th. Teammates still in 7th place as we watch Alan McNish. McNish 16th quickest, and that first sector, well, it's just another run.
Okay.
Yes, the two Toyotas have completed a reasonable number of laps. Mika Salo 11th fastest. He's done some 12 laps in this session. Of course, Salo also very, very experienced, and this is where Salo made his debut some 8 years ago, driving for Lotus. Been a career of ups and downs. His best success, ironically, coming in when he was standing in for Michael Schumacher in 1999, driving for Ferrari. Alan McNish, who we're watching now, in only his first year of Grand Prix racing, but it could be his only year. I have to say, there doesn't look like there's many options for Alan in Formula 1 next year. I do gather, though, that he's going to be getting a test drive with the Penske team in IRL.
I think it's little more than a quid pro quo, because Helio Castroneves did drive this car in testing at Paul Ricard, and I think it's just a reciprocal thank you very much to Toyota, and there is nothing in it. Penske being quite emphatic, saying that we've got Gilles de Ferran and Helio Castroneves under contract for next year. Takuma Sato's improved a little bit. Jenson Button also looking to improve, as is Rubens Barrichello, as we watch McLaren, Kimi Raikkonen. And again, the aggressive way that Raikkonen turns the wheel, he's got no fear whatsoever about the rear of that car. He doesn't mind as long as the front is just planted to the racetrack. This is the powder track. In last year's Grand Prix, of course, we had that big off, and Jean Alesi right behind him collected him, and bits of wheels and bodywork all over the place.
That's right, yes.
That's that's an example of Takuma Sato and his Takuma Sato vest, son.
He got it sorted out just
I
about.
bet he did a fantastic job, because round the Dunlop curve you do not want to do what he did, but those incredible reactions, and Eddie Jordan pondering, I think, as many things as Takuma Sato's future as well, because still no announcement from the team whether Sato is confirmed or not, or what in fact will be the situation for the Jordan driver lineup 2003.
So Raikkonen continues on his way round. Just remember that Coulthard is 3rd fastest, Raikkonen currently 5th fastest, and they're sort of in there with the Williams BMW, similar sort of pace, but this looks like it will be a slight improvement for the Finn.
Yes, I think that we should see him certainly move, well, at least what, a few hundredths of a second slower than Montoya does. He goes 4th, Montoya pops down to 5th, and he's what, well, 0.05 of a second quicker now than the Colombian.
Teammate Coulthard sits in the pits. This was always a good track for Mika Häkkinen as well, and in fact on several occasions Häkkinen and Michael Schumacher had almighty battles in qualifying, particularly a couple of
points are totally wrong. I have to enable it. Okay, understood.
Interesting, don't know quite what he was mentioning there. Has to enable it, so one of the systems perhaps not quite doing what it should do. And the experienced Mika Salo looking forward to his final Grand Prix. He was talking earlier in the week saying, well, it doesn't feel that different. Doesn't feel that different to him at the moment. Perhaps it will feel somewhat odd next year when the first Grand Prix takes place.
What switch is it? Shift, but he knows. Okay. Yes, disabled it.
So not a quick lap at all, as no doubt he does his resets or whatever he needs to do.
Well, with just 2 minutes of the session remaining, Raikkonen, as we go on board here with Mika Salo, but Raikkonen further improving in the first sector, and a slightly frustrating end to this session, I think, for Mika Salo. Still 12th quickest on a 1:38.8. Oh, and there's a big lock up into the chicane as Felipe Massa uses that bit of almost like lawn to drive across his tarmac, sprayed green, and he does the right thing and decides just to take it rather than bump the car, or maybe even spin it in the middle of that chicane.
You can get away with it once in a Grand Prix, but if you do it a couple of times, you're likely to come in for a penalty. That's certainly the way it was handled last year. Look at Eddie Irvine, he's going well.
Yes, Eddie could make a small improvement. He's certainly gotten the personal best in second sector. So the Jaguar driver potentially in his last drive for the team, a 3-year contract. Van improves up to 7th. So Eddie, again, confident that he's got a drive lined up. I think current rumours suggest it's in Jordan, but of course it'll all depend on what happens at Jordan in terms of title sponsorship and many other factors.
So Coulthard's obviously finished his session. Meanwhile, there's the Minardi on the grass. That's Alex Young rejoining, no damage done, so he's okay. He is slowest of all at the moment on a 1:41.596. That's some 5 seconds off the pace that Michael Schumacher has set. His teammate Mark Webber is around about 0.8 of a second faster than that. So Kimi Räikkönen, you were talking about him, John, on a good, better lap earlier, but he has backed off a bit now.
I'll tell you what, he's magic committed coming through the 130R.
Yes, he has. He was quick through there, so he hasn't backed off too much. Just the actual times coming up on our screen don't show any improvements, but obviously running a sequence of laps here just to look at tyre wear and performance, so he's still pushing very hard. 37.389, he stays in 4th place. That's only a 10th slower than his previous best.
Yes, he's just about half a second slower than teammate David Coulthard, who's currently in 3rd place, but still really nobody challenging the pace of Michael Schumacher or Rubens Barrichello in the dominant Ferrari.
So checkered flag on the first free practice session here at Suzuka, and Michael Schumacher with the fastest time. We're still riding with Kimi Räikkönen. Now he begins to back off. I was wondering how long it would take, with the checkered flag being out. He has now backed it off. Great view though from that top ball camera.
Interesting, Ben, on that section from the hairpin down to Spoon, he was flat out, and Alan McNish was not getting any closer. McNish in the Toyota just ahead of Räikkönen, so straight line squirt. The Toyota is certainly more than a match for what Mercedes and McLaren have got.
Yes, well, we've seen that all year. The Toyota engine has been particularly strong. Of course, the Toyota team run from Germany, but it'll be interesting to see how they get on this weekend. So the fairground wheel in the background, of course, this Suzuka track is part of a huge entertainment complex, not just the racetrack itself. Originally really built for the Honda staff to enjoy themselves in their off time, and this track, as we mentioned, first opened in the early 60s, hosting its first Grand Prix though not until 1987.
Well, Ralf Schumacher locks up into the chicane, and a circuit that has changed a little bit. Originally this corner, this chicane, didn't exist. It used to come flat out of 130R, then flat out through that. I mean, it'd been a fantastic corner if it was still in existence today. Circuit brought up to Formula 1 specs in 1987, and further modifications, and there's part of the fun fair. I mean, this place, if you like roller coaster rides, this is the place to come.
Well, Michael Schumacher dominating this free practice session once again. The two Ferraris on top, but look at the rest of the top 10, all Michelin users from Coulthard through Räikkönen, Montoya, Ralf Schumacher. The two Jaguars are in there and the two Renaults, all on the Michelin tyre, but still none of them apparently with the answer to Ferrari. But a track like this, I'm surprised in a way that Ferrari's advantage isn't even more than it is. It should suit the car massively here this weekend, and it certainly suits Michael Schumacher. So Michelin seems to have come up with a pretty good tyre, but it's early days yet. Fisichella then best of the rest in 11th place, ahead of Mika Salo. Good effort in the Toyota that. Takuma Sato, not too far off his teammate when you consider it's first time in a Grand Prix car around this track, although he does know the circuit. Panis 14th after his problems earlier. Heidfeld and Massa, well, that's a bit disappointing. We saw the car twitching around and looking nervous, and in the times it certainly hasn't shown well. McNish 17th, Webber, Villeneuve, who had the accident, and Alex Young ending up with the slowest time.
Well, I think looking at the Sauber times, look back at what we were watching with Heidfeld, I mean, that could not be a comfortable car around this circuit. Looked like it was very much too pointy, and you know, the driver always hunting to find the point of entry into a corner Because really you should be able to do that with confidence and not have to seek it out literally by the corner.
So there's Michael, a little shrug of the shoulders, but as ever, working hard to improve the car, no matter what his advantage might be. He never lets up. And over the other side of the garage, Rubens Barrichello, looking quite serious for him. Meanwhile, let's take a look back over the highlights of that first session.